The FDA taking new action to help stop the outbreak of deadly food-borne illnesses. This comes after a string of recent food poisoning cases, including an outbreak of salmonella at Chipotle restaurants in Minnesota that sent dozens of people to the hospital. Dr. Devi is an associate professor of anesthesiology and rehabilitation at NYU's School of Medicine. These dangers are scary, and they live in everything. I mean, from fruits and vegetables like cucumbers and spinach to peanut products to ice cream. We're talking listeria, salmonella, E. coli. Why the increase?
I think it has to do with all the different steps available, where bacteria and viruses can infect our food. So if you think about it in the past, the things that we used to worry about are washing our hands, don't leave milk and other products outside in the hot and humid weather for long, be careful when you're cooking meat. But now there are so many other areas where things can get infected. So, for example, with the things that the FDA is looking at now, with these food processing plants, there are a lot of things that we haven't considered. So for the peanut butter infection or infestation that happened before, what had happened was that the peanuts were left out in the open where birds could basically fly over them and their droppings could get into the peanuts before they made the peanut butter. So if you think about these things, there's nothing that consumers can do really to protect themselves from that. So it really has to be the food manufacturer that intervenes and does something.
Okay, so the new safety measures, which actually go into effect later this year, requires food manufacturers to prepare food safety plans. I mean, I don't know why this wasn't put in place long ago, because bird droppings in my peanut butter, I kind of have a problem with that. The government basically wants these manufacturers to explain how they're keeping their operations clean. Then they're going to have to lay out how to handle and process food and how they monitor.
I think it's a very basic step. I mean, I would have thought they would have done that on their own without the FDA having to intervene.
Absolutely.
I mean, even if you go to a restaurant, your local restaurant, they have all kinds of regulations. If you go to the restroom, it says employees must wash hands. So these aren't new things, but now the government has to intervene to actually make sure it's done.
Right. Okay, so what are the signs of food poisoning versus just, say, indigestion or some other kind of stomach bug?
It's very difficult to tell the difference. So, I mean, the obvious things are if you have nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and you remember just eating something a few hours before.
How long does it take for that to kick in? Because some people, if they get it right away, I always say no, it hasn't been in your system long enough. I mean, how long after you've eaten something that's got one of these bacteria do you start feeling these symptoms?
Well, it depends. So the bacteria usually take longer to take effect, so maybe a couple days, but sometimes they make these toxins that can hit right away within a few hours. So it depends what you're actually getting sick from. But the symptoms are pretty much the same. You could have nausea, vomiting, cramps, you could have diarrhea. Sometimes people have fevers also. So those are the basic symptoms, and it's really hard to pick out whether that's from food poisoning or whether it's from some other illness. But the real issue that would bring you to the hospital or to the doctor is if you can't keep anything down, because then you could get dehydrated and you can have symptoms affecting all your organs.
It just kind of makes you not want to go out to eat, because I mean, aside from employees not washing their hands, the food is coming from these food manufacturing plants, and they're already infected before they even get into the restaurant.
Exactly.
And there's nothing a consumer can do to protect themselves?
There's not much. I mean, they can still cook their food more. I mean, there are things that they can do to protect themselves.
But if you're going out to a restaurant.
Exactly. Then the store or the restaurant has to take more precautions. But there are certain things where it's inevitable that if the food is infected, there's not much you can do. And this is actually a huge problem. It's not a minor thing. I mean, the CDC's estimate is that 1 in 6 Americans gets food poisoning from this, and 3,000 people die per year.
Yeah, everybody knows someone who's had food poisoning.
Of course.
And I've never had it, but the stories are horrific. So, I mean, these regulations should have been put in place long ago.
I agree with you.
And some of these bacteria actually can cause death. I mean, these are serious bacteria that can cause terrible infection. Dr. Devi, thank you very much for talking to us.
You.
Kelly.
I've had food poisoning, and I don't want to have it ever again. Thank you, ladies.